Okay, well, I'm going to start my shameless plug for COS412, the second course in Unity. And as such, I'm going to be stopping and starting the video, the recording, so that you don't have to sit through the various loadings. But let me share a screen here. So I showed you some Navmesh stuff as part of the AI section here. But one of the advanced features that we'll do in 4.12 is the advanced features of the Navmesh. And try and get this here. So just to show you, here's an example with the off-mesh links that let a character jump from one place to another. So it climbs up there, it jumps across to here, it jumps across to there. If I go down here, it goes down that link and then over and up this link. These are just a few of the features that we have with the higher power Navmesh system. Another one is the different size agents. Now, as well here, as you can see, the dynamic generation of a map. This is actually generating two. We have two different characters. They're different sizes. One can get through the little narrow spots, the other can't. And so we have this ability to specify different nav meshes for different agents. I think I might have showed this in class the other day. These are the crowd simulations. We have crowds of characters that we can manipulate with the nav mesh. Here I've got, here I've got a whole slug of characters who are going to eventually do something. So there's I think a total of 800 different Navmesh agents here, and they're waypoint finding back and forth between the two different things. I also have this set up so that we can have battles between different characters. Have battles between different characters. Where's the battle? This is the battle. So these armies will fight and kill each other off as they war. You can see the numbers going down. And so all of these will be options in the future class. This is one I really had a lot of fun with, a self-running maze. First of all, it's a procedurally generated maze. And we use the Navmesh to provide us with paths through the maze. So this is a self-generating maze. We can have a self-running maze that itself calculates the path between the different spots here. So we're starting off here, and it's calculated this Navmesh path to this point somewhere far in the distance, and I can point and click, and it will recalculate the path to a different spot, and it does this all at runtime. This is generation of Navmeshes at runtime. one can use this to generate paths. For instance, we could have the maze generated in the dark, and we have these lights that lead us forward through the maze. What I've been doing is putting the lights at the corners of the points. This is not all you can do with the Navmesh. Not all you can do with the Navmesh. With the off-mesh links and the procedurally generated Navmesh, you can actually have the points that our little character is going to go to be part of a three-dimensional world. So if this ever generates, I have a three-dimensional world here, and I can point and click to a spot, and my little character goes up there. I can point to a spot up here, and my little character goes up there. And so you can have these three-dimensional worlds in which our mazes all are generated. And finally, an example here of the self-generated maze. This one doesn't use Navmesh, but I thought I'd show it because it fits in with the mazes. Here, in this case, it's generating a maze. That my character will have to go through and collect various items in. Shouldn't have made it so big. So it generates a maze. And this maze is composed of some objects that I got from the asset store called fragmentable objects. And it made for a very interesting kind of maze game in that instead of having to stick to the maze, I could actually wander through it. I've got these glass doors that go between different sections of the maze. And if you go through the glass door, it breaks into glass fragments, which of course cut and damage your player. We're supposed to be picking up these different objects. And the fun thing here is if you get tired of sticking to the maze, you can just break through the walls, and the walls are fragmentable objects, and we can go through them. These are, of course, terribly laggy in the world. So I'm going to stop share screen here for a second, and I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, I'm back having loaded things. Let me get the share screen going for this. So we're kind of accustomed to gravity being straight down, but I found a wonderful tutorial on spherical gravity. And so here we have these planets that are exerting gravity. Here we are on the surface of the planet. As I walk around the planet, oops, I just went into orbit. You can see it. This is weak gravity, so my character has jumped off the surface of the planet and come back around again. Oops. Here's 4 planets that my character can now jump from one planet to another, taking into account the gravity of all 4 planets and jumping among them. This is a mechanic for a game, I imagine. And I kind of turned this around and made a space station. A little space station by essentially reversing the gravity so that it pushes out instead of in. I have now a spherical gravity that I could put in a big wheel space station. I also do some stuff with ProBuilder, which is how I built this this torus that my space station lives inside. And so another example there of a of the use of this spherical gravity with some ProBuilder assets. So let me stop the sharing. Pause recording. All right, I'm back with CineMachine. Let me share the screen here again. CineMachine is an advanced camera system. Here's an example with our dude character where I have this camera now. This is called a free look camera that you can move around, and it adjusts to your position. There are a number of really cool tools here. So here I've added a state camera. When I jump, the camera jiggles and moves to the side. When I slide, the camera does something else. So we have this state camera. There's also a dolly system where here now the camera is constrained to move on a track. The blue thing there is the camera that's moving on this track with my character. As I move around, the camera follows me, but not from any close position. It follows me from its dolly track, and the camera is constrained to move on a little track that we put out through the world. There's also a best view feature, and here I've added a gun to the camera, so it's firing bullets at me. If I run behind one of these objects so that the camera, which is the left-hand view there, can't see me, the camera automatically finds a view that lets it see the character. So you could have some kind of automated gun that would always be able to see your character. And this is CineMachine, which we'll talk about, of course, in detail. Let me again pause the recording. As long as we're talking about cameras, one of the other things that we can do with cameras is render textures. This is where the texture, instead of being sent to the screen, is generates a material that you can then put on objects. So whatever the camera sees can be, as I said, made into a material that you put on an object. So here's an example of a texture on an object. There's the camera up there that's looking at me, taking pictures and rendering it on that object. You can put this on a UI element. So this is a world space UI element. It looks kind of the same, but now we don't have this texture all over the object. And of course, we could do something like this, make a TV object that that has, there's the camera up there in the world watching me with a look at, but we have a TV screen that we can generate in the world. So this is render textures, and I'll stop the share screen here, and I'll pause recording. So we played a bit with shiny objects. Uh, uh, Here are some examples of shiny objects. Uh, they have these mirror reflections on them, but they're not actually proper mirrors. They don't behave correctly for a proper mirror. And so I wanted to make mirrors, and here's a scene with a bunch of mirrors. It's very laggy in Zoom. Let me get inside the mirror room here. So I've got a bunch of physics-based mirrors. These are mirrors that do accurate geometry. They reflect each other. We can look around the room here and see all the different mirrors. I had hoped to make a mirror maze out of this, but it's way too laggy to do anything like that. So we'll talk about those. I'm going to pause recording. Okay, let me get the share screen going. I like doing physics. Here's an example of a mesh that we're controlling with physics, where it's built of a whole bunch of springs that are connecting the different vertices of the mesh. And so I want to compare some of these. This is a 35 by 35 mesh, so 1,200 vertices. And this is running sequentially. One of the things that I'll also do with the physics is use the new jobs system that is threaded. Unfortunately, in Zoom, it doesn't pick up as fast as I would have liked it to. We're getting 2 frames per second here sequentially, and in parallel, it went up to 8 there for a second. I apologize, this is not demonstrating this very well, but suffice it to say that we will do parallel jobs that let us do threaded systems. Another physics problem that I like is orbits and body problems. I will do planetary systems, solar systems, and many body problems. This is done sequentially. I have 400 planets here chugging along at 2 frames per second. With the parallel job system, the frame rate doesn't really go up. It's maybe doubled. It's much better without Zoom. And there's actually something called a burst compiler that is really fast. So even with Zoom running, we had like about a 7-time jump in performance. And this is actually beginning to look like something that you would want to use in an n-body simulation. Let me stop the share screen, and I'll pause the recording while I load the next batch. Okay, this is a really strange one. This one is called World, WRLD, and it's a plugin for Unity that contains a map of the entire world with buildings. So here's my airplane flying over New York City. There's Central Park down there. Whoops, I don't want to crash. Now I'm over Brooklyn. And it contains real landmarks. There's the Empire State Building over there. As we fly down to southern Manhattan, you can see the new World Trade Center. It has representations of buildings all over the world. Uh, Out here, I'll try and fly by the Statue of Liberty. So that's all pretty cool. And I don't know if this will work, but here's Orono. Uh, and it's kind of a Google Map-like thing. You can set it up so that you start off in space. And you can zoom down in, closer and closer. And this is loading all this over the internet. These are not stored on my computer. These are maps that are being pulled in from across the web. And I can zoom down into Orono. And look right there, there's East Annex, which is where my office is. Here's Neville Hall. This is Corbett. And it has this kind of detail for the world, all the roads, all the rivers. It's very, very cool. Let me pause this. Okay, and the last one, let me get a share screen going, is the Rockem Sockem robots. I got this great set of monsters from the asset store. And I don't know if any of you remember Rockem Sockem robots, but they were a plastic toy that would fight you could fight, and if you hit them enough times, they would knock each other's heads off. And so here are two of them fighting each other. And of course, you can fight individually the other characters. I'm controlling the little guy here, chasing this big fire guy. I believe this is also using Cinema Sheen for the camera. I don't know if I can beat this guy. There, I killed him. He falls over, falls apart, and he jumps in joy. So clearly a lot of fun there. These are all topics that we'll deal with in 412. 412, as I might have mentioned, is very much a self-study class, an independent study. You're tasked with finding a topic that we didn't cover in 312 and make it your own, and report on your progress in such a way that the other members of the class could follow your example. So I'm going to stop the recording here now and post this. Bye. See you in class.